Hi readers, Lee here, and welcome to my weekend books. And this week is a highly, much to my surprise, it's heavily nonfiction. I can't even believe it. It was not planned. But let's begin, shall we? So the first book that I bought, and this book was the only book I went into the Barnes & Noble for, and that is a book that I had heard an author interview with Amy Tan on NPR's, it's like a Book of the Day podcast, and I've got a couple of books by Amy Tan, fiction books, but I have not read them yet. I'll have to rectify that someday. But in this podcast, she was talking about the Backyard Bird Chronicles. It's written and illustrated by her, and this is just lovely. Lovely. When she was doing this, she was teaching herself how to draw. So I'm really excited to read this book. There's beautiful, beautiful illustrations. But let me tell you a little bit about it. In 2016, Amy Tan grew overwhelmed by the state of the world. Hatred and misinformation had become a daily presence on social media, and the country felt more divided than ever. In search of peace, Tan turned to the natural world just beyond her window, and, specifically, to the birds visiting her yard. But what began as an attempt to find solace turned into something far greater, an opportunity to savor quiet moments during a volatile time, connect to nature in a meaningful way, and imagine the intricate lives of the birds she admired. I'm a bit of a... I wouldn't say I'm a birder, but I do feed the birds in my backyard, and both I and the cat love them. I've got cardinals in the backyard and a lot of other birds that I can't identify, and one of my favorite things to do is sit outside on my screened and back porch. It is very peaceful. It's soothing, especially on a day like today when it's not hot and muggy. So once I find a fiction book today, I will take it outside, listen to the birdies, and I'm not sure when I'll get to reading this because I'm reading another book right now, nonfiction, but I'm really glad to have it, and I will read it. So, went in for one book, had to have help finding it, but when I found it, I stumbled across this one, The Soul of an Octopus, A Surprising Exploration into Wonder Consciousness, by Montgomery. I had heard about this book from Greg over at Supposedly Fun, talked about this book. I don't remember what he said, but when I saw the cover, I was like, I gotta get that book. This does not have... Oh, it does. It has pictures as well. Not hand-drawn by Amy Tan, but in this book, popular naturalist Montgomery explores the emotional and physical world of the octopus, the remarkable connections it makes with people, and the vibrant community that arises around this complex, intelligent, and spirited creature. Practicing true immersion journalism from New England aquarium tanks to the reefs of French Polynesia and the Gulf of Mexico, Montgomery befriends individual octopuses with strikingly different personalities: gentle Athena, assertive Octavia, curious Callie, and joyful Karma, who show their cleverness in myriad ways, escaping enclosures, creative trickery to get food, and jetting water to bounce balls. I feel like I've read a story about, like an article about an octopus who would get out of his tank and then go to another tank and steal fishes, and then go back to his tank? Montgomery also chronicles scientists' growing appreciation of the octopus's problem-solving as she tells a love story. By turns funny, entertaining, touching, and profound, The Soul of an Octopus reveals what octopuses can teach us about the meeting of two very different animals. So this looks like a great read. And I've got a couple books that feature octopuses, so I might do a post about octopuses or octopi, whatever. So because I had bought a paperback, the seller offered me a book of, they had a stack of books there, and I could get one 50% off. So I just picked up this one. This is the only fiction book in this stack that I got this week. This is a YA monthly pick. They're Vicious Games by Joelle, Wellington. Adina Walker has known the entire time she's been on scholarship at the prestigious Edgewater Academy, a school for the uber-rich and mostly white New England upper class. It's why she works so hard to be perfect, above reproach, no matter what she has to force under the surface. Even one slip can cost her everything. And it does. One fight, one moment of lost control, leaves Adina blacklisted from her top choice Ivy League college and any other. Her only chance to regain the future she sacrificed everything for is the finish, a high-stakes contest sponsored by Edgewater's founding family, in which 12 young, ambitious women with exceptional promise are selected to compete in 3 mysterious events: the Ride, the Raid, and the Royale. The winner will be granted entry into the fold of the Remington family, whose wealth and power can open any door. But when she arrives at the finish, Adina gets the feeling that something isn't quite right with both the Remingtons and her competition. And it soon becomes clear that this larger-than-life prize can only come at an even greater cost, because the finish's stakes aren't just make or break, they're life or death. Adina knows the deck is stacked against her. It always has been, but maybe the only way to survive their vicious games is for her to change the rules. So, interesting. I just grabbed it. It seemed the most interesting one. Next up is a book I just finished last night. I read it in 2 days, mostly after work. And on Wednesday, I'll post my thoughts on books on this book. That is Send Me, The True Story of a Mother at War by Marty Skovlund Jr. and Joe Kent. Gotta put my glasses on for this one. This was a fantastic read, really easy, accessible to the layman. But let me tell you about it. Of the 1.3 million active duty service members in the U.S. military, only a tiny fraction are selected as operators in America's most elite military units. Shannon Kent was among the first women to serve at this level and was widely recognized as one of the best. Kent joined the Navy as a cryptologic technician responsible for signals intelligence and electronic warfare, but her proficiency with languages set her apart. She was assigned to a secret task force on her first deployment to Iraq, a shadowy path that eventually led to her hunting America's most wanted terrorists. She ascended through the ranks of multiple special operations units, often working as a clandestine intelligence operative alongside Navy SEALs and special forces throughout the Middle East and around the world. During a special operations training course, she reconnected with Joe, a special forces soldier she'd first met in a war zone. They fell in love, got married, and together built a family, alternating deployments, so at least one of them would be home for their 2 young boys. Despite the risks, they couldn't give up on their loyalty to their country or ignore the stakes. For Shannon, that was hunting the leaders of ISIS, the deadliest terror organization in the world. But the many successes in her mission to thwart terrorism would eventually lead to her making the ultimate sacrifice. Send Me is Shannon's heroic life story and a peek into the secretive world of special ops intelligence. It is the legacy of a remarkably talented woman who rose to the pinnacle of the military, working with the most elite forces in the world, and offers a glimpse into the complicated life of a special forces family. So again, really good book. Highly recommend reading it. And you can catch my other thoughts on this on Wednesday. Whew. Slow down for a minute. I don't do too well with short story collections or essay collections. I think because it's very difficult to read something all the way through, and I like to read a book all the way through. So I do mostly longer form fiction or novellas. That said, I still pick up short story collections, even though I try to resist. And last year, during Pride Month, this is going to show you how I do with short story or essay collections. During Pride Month last year, which was in June, we're almost back to that, I went up to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and I picked up, among other things, It Came from the Closet, Queer Reflections on Horror. I thought it would be an interesting read, and it is, but I still haven't finished it. I am determined to finish this before Pride Month this year, and I've got, I think, just 2 more essays left, as I've already read the final essay because it's about Sleepaway Camp, which I loved that movie. It's so, I love a bad horror movie, and it is awful. Anywho, all that to say, I have been working on this when I think about it, and the other day, after I finished another book, I picked this up and I read an essay in it. The essay was called Long Nights in the Dark by Richard Scott Larson, and I found that essay to be really beautiful. It's about his queerness and the movie Halloween, which I had to go rewatch, by the way, after I read this. I found it beautifully written, and, it touched my heart. So I looked him up, and I discovered he had written a memoir called The Long Hallway. And I knew I had to have it. It is 170 pages long. I will probably read this during Pride Month this year, because I'm not ready for it yet. And also, I've got to finish that. Anywho, need my glasses on this one too. Growing up queer, closeted, and afraid, Richard Scott Larson found expression for his interior life in horror films, especially John Carpenter's 1978 classic, Halloween. He developed an intense childhood identification with Michael Myers. He talks about that in that essay. Carpenter's inscrutable masked villain, as well as Michael's potential victims. In The Long Hallway, Larson scrutinizes this identification, meditating on horror as a metaphor for the torments of the closet. Larson was only 9 years old when he recognized something of his own experience in how Michael Myers hid his true face from the world. This spark of recognition ignited his imagination while he searched for clues to what the future might hold for boys like him, all the while being made to understand his nascent sexuality as deviant and punishable. Like in the movies, his superficially safe suburban childhood was in fact filled with threat. A classmate's murder, his father's alcoholism and death, and his own sexual assault by a much older man. The figurative mask Larson learned to wear could not contain his yearning to be seen and desired. In the aftermath of this violence, his boyhood self came to believe that fear and desire would be forever intertwined. This lyrical memoir expresses a boy's search for identity while navigating the darkness and isolation of a deeply private inner world. With introspection and tenderness, Larson reflects on how little we understand in the moment about the experiences that mark us forever. So, really looking forward to reading this. I will read this in Pride Month. So, I really looking forward to it. Also, kind of related to a podcast, like the first book I found was from a podcast. This book, too, was from a podcast, and it goes along with my typical nonfiction studies this past couple years, and that's World War II. This book has no pictures. I wish it did. Is by Jason Lantzer. It is called Dwight Eisenhower and the Holocaust, A History. Let's see. Dwight Eisenhower's encounter with the Holocaust altered how he understood the Second World War and shaped how he led the United States and the Western Alliance during the Cold War. This is the first book to blend scholarship. They put something over the ISBN code, damn it. To blend scholarship on Eisenhower, World War II, and the Holocaust together, constructing a narrative that offers new insights into all three, all while uncovering the story of how he became among the first to vow that such atrocities would never again be allowed to happen. From the moment he stepped foot in the concentration camp Ohrdruf in April 1945, defeating Nazi Germany took on a moral hue for Eisenhower that had largely been absent before. It spurred the belief that totalitarianism in all its forms needed to be confronted. This conviction shaped his presidency and solidified American engagement in the post-war world. Putting these pieces of the story together alters how we view and understand the second half of the 20th century. So, let's see. I'm interested in reading this. Like I've said, I've been really interested in the world wars over the past couple years, and this one just to focus on what he saw at the camps and how that affected him as a leader, I believe should be really interesting. So, this was very expensive for a single book, but hey, worth it. It's not like I haven't spent that much on books before. Anywho, this really came as a surprise, and I didn't think about it until I sat down to do this video, but there's only one fiction book. I only bought one fiction book this past week. Everything else was nonfiction. Am I becoming a scholar? Who knows? Hey, I'd love to hear what you're reading now, and if you have any suggestions or comments about any of the books I picked up, love to hear about it. That's all for me. Happy reading!